Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Shtotra Shri Sriman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gaura. This is live. YouTube. Thank you. So the one. So then that's a live. Be uploaded. This one, yes, can be uploaded. Live is already uploaded. Yeah, what I do is I delete it and then this one because okay. So as we've assembled here for the reading and discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam, let's begin with an auspicious invocation to invoke the blessings of all the previous acharyas and Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, Sri Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 7, verse 4. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Shri Shuka Uvacha Kadachidotani Kakau to Kaplave Kadachidotani Kakau to Kaplave Janmarksha Yoge Samaveta Yoshitam Janmarksha Yoge Samaveta Yoshitam Vaditra Gita Dvijamantra Vachakaish Vaditra Gita Dvijamantra Vachakaish Chakara Sunora Vicheshanam Sati Chakara Sunora Vicheshanam Sati Shri Shuka Vacha Kadachidotani Kakau to Kaplave Janmarksha Yoge Samaveta Yoshitam Vaditra Gita Dvijamantra Vachakaish Chakara Sunora Vishechanam Sati. Please go ahead and recite.
Shri Shuka Vacha
Shri Shuka Vacha
Kadachit Otanika Kautuka Plave
Kadachidotani Kautuka Plave
Janma Raksha Yoge Samaveta Yoshitam
Janmarksha Yoge Samaveta Yoshitam
Vaditra Gita Dvijamantra Vachakaish
Vaditra Gita Dvijamantra Vachakaish
Sunor Abhishechanam Sati
Chakara Sunora Vishechanam Sati
Kadachidotani Kakatu Kaplave
Kadachidotani Kakautu Kaplave
Janmarksha Yoge Samaveta Yoshitam
Janmarksha Yoge Samaveta Yoshitam
Vadrita Gita Dvijamantra Vachakaish
Vaditra Gita Dvijamantra Vachakaish
Chakara Suno Abhishechanam Sati
Chakara Sunora Vishechanam Sati Vaishnavis? Oh, go ahead. Go.
I'll try.
Okay, go ahead.
The first 3 words are a bit difficult. Shri Sukha Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Vacha.
Kadachit Atanika Kautuka Pave.
Kadachidauttanika kautuka pave.
Sarvaksha Yoge Samaveta Yositam.
Janmariksha yoge samaveta yoshitam.
Vaditra Gita Dija Mantra Vachakais.
Vaditra Gita Dija Mantra Vachakaish.
Chakara Sunor Abhisechanam Sati.
Chakara Sunor Abhishechanam Sati. Would any Vaishnavis like to recite? Okay, we can go ahead to the word for word then. Shri Shuka Vacha. Shri Shukadev Goswami continued to speak at the request of Maharaj Parikshit. Kadachit, at that time, when Krishna was 3 months old, Autanika Kautuka Aplave, when Krishna was 3 or 4 months old, and his body was developing, he attempted to turn around. And this pleasing occasion was observed with a festival and bathing ceremony. Janmariksha yoge. At that time, there was also a conjunction of the moon with the auspicious constellation Rohini. Samaveta Yoshitam. The ceremony was observed among the assembled women. A ceremony of mothers. Vaditra Gita. With different varieties of music and singing. Dvija Mantra Vachakai. With chanting of Vedic hymns by qualified brahmanas. Chakara. Executed. Suno. Of her son. Abhishechanam. The bathing ceremony. Sati. Mother Yashoda. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Shukadev Goswami said, when Mother Yashoda's baby was slanting his body to attempt to rise and turn around, this attempt was observed by a Vedic ceremony. In such a ceremony, called Uttana, which is performed when a child is due to leave the house for the first time, the child is properly bathed. Just after Krishna turned 3 months old, Mother Yashoda celebrated this ceremony with other women of the neighborhood. On that day, there was a conjunction of the moon with the constellation Rohini. As the brahmanas joined by chanting Vedic hymns, and professional musicians also took part, this great ceremony was observed by Mother Yashoda. Purport. There is no question of overpopulation or of children's being a burden for their parents in Vedic society. Such a society is so well organized, and people are so advanced in spiritual consciousness, that childbirth is never regarded as a burden or a botheration. The more a child grows, the more his parents become jubilant, and the child's attempts to turn over are also a source of jubilation. Even before the child is born, when the mother is pregnant, many recommended ritualistic ceremonies are performed. For example, when the child has been within the womb for 3 months and for 7 months, there is a ceremony the mother observes by eating with neighborhood children. This ceremony is called Swada Bhakshana. Similarly, before the birth of the child, there is the Garbhadana ceremony. In Vedic civilization, childbirth or pregnancy is never regarded as a burden. Rather, it is a cause for jubilation. In contrast, people in modern civilization do not like pregnancy or childbirth, and when there is a child, they sometimes kill it. You can just consider how human society has fallen since the inauguration of Kali Yuga. Although people still claim to be civilized, at the present moment there is actually no human civilization, but only an assembly of two-legged animals. So now I'll recite Mangalacharana, or auspicious invocation, before beginning. Om Gyanatimirantasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadvitam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanviramscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, I'll just read the translation one last time. Shukadev Goswami said, when Mother Yashoda's baby was slanting his body to attempt to rise and turn around, this attempt was observed by a Vedic ceremony. In such a ceremony, called Uttana, which is performed when a child is due to leave the house for the first time, the child is properly bathed. Just after Krishna turned 3 months old, Mother Yashoda celebrated this ceremony with other women of the neighborhood. On that day, there was a conjunction of the moon with the constellation Rohini. As the Brahmanas joined by chanting Vedic hymns, and professional musicians also took part, this great ceremony was observed by Mother Yashoda. So, in today's verse and in today's purport, we're learning a little bit about how Vedic society is organized and about the culture and values of Vedic society. And, hearing such qualities of Vedic society is relevant to us because, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaishtra sarvar aham eva vedya vedanta krid veda videva chaham. He says that actually the purpose of everything written in the Vedas is ultimately to know me. Indeed, Krishna says that he's actually the compiler of the Vedas. He's written the Vedanta. And so everything found in the Vedas and Vedic culture is based on the message of the Vedas. And it's a culture which is designed around helping people to follow the instructions of the Vedas. So everything in relation to those two things ultimately directs us towards Krishna and directs us towards the ultimate goal of life that Krishna indicates in the Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Just always think of me, become my devotee, worship me and offer your homage unto me. So Krishna is ultimately designed everything towards directing us towards engaging in pure devotional service at his lotus feet. So Vedic culture is pervaded by this ultimate purpose. And so the qualities of Vedic culture are therefore relevant to us. And so one of the qualities being brought out here is how in Vedic culture there's a great understanding of Dharma. And Dharma is a word that's a little bit difficult to translate into English or French or other languages because it's very unique to the Sanskrit language. And there's various different ways of understanding it. Sometimes it's roughly translated as religion, but if we look into it, we find that the definition goes a lot deeper. And it also indicates that which is so intrinsic to something that it cannot be separated from that entity or person's nature. And Prabhupada gave the example of sugar. The dharma of sugar is to be sweet. That's this intrinsic quality that can never be separated from sugar. You know, if your friend came to you one day with a cup of sugar in their hand and they said, there's something really strange about this sugar, it's salty. It's really salty, this sugar, for some reason. You'd say, that's not sugar. You got it wrong. Because the dharma of sugar can't be changed. It's always sweet. And the Vedic culture has a very brilliant way of recognizing what is natural and what is a person's nature, and how to therefore engage their nature in such a way that they're spiritually benefited. We have our eternal spiritual nature as eternal servants of Krishna. We're a spark of that ultimate spiritual supreme, a small spark whose ultimate purpose and goal is to reunite with the Supreme, having been separated in the material world. The purpose of life, the purpose of this whole material world is to reunite with that original Supreme person. But we also, over the course of our sojourn in the material world, accepting different vehicles, life after life, there's also a way in which it's valuable to understand what is the nature of the particular vehicle that I'm occupying at this point in my existence, in this lifetime. And so although that nature, the nature of the material body is material, it's not considered irrelevant in Vedic society, simply because, well, we're not the body. So the Vedic culture, coming from Krishna, knows how to ingeniously engage somebody according to the nature of their material body in such a way that they can ultimately become liberated from that material body, and indeed liberated from the entire material conception, to returning to the completely original spiritual conception. And so this system is called Varnashram Dharma. And in Varnashram Dharma, it's acknowledged that different people have different natures. Some have the nature of having great intelligence and a capacity for understanding wisdom and understanding the Vedas and having the ability to teach. And so it engages such persons as teachers and spiritual guides for society. Some persons have a natural inclination to protect or fight, and so that is engaged in a spiritually uplifting way by giving them the duty of protecting all the members of society and protecting especially the Brahmanas, who are the spiritual heads of society. And those are the Kshatriyas, the kings and the warriors and administrators. And then we have the Vaishyas, and the contribution that they make towards society is that they provide for society all the resources that they need, whether it's food grains or vegetables, fruits, milk, caring for cows, taking care of all banking and business transactions. So they're providing the resources for society and purifying their tendency to want to make money by serving society in this way. And then there are those who are naturally inclined to just roll up their sleeves and do some physical work and just serve as assistants to the other three classes, helping them perform the various tasks that they're doing. And each member of society, when they take up their spiritual duty, their material occupation, in a spirit of devotion, then they purify themselves. And so it's not seen that having the nature of a warrior or having the nature of, let's say, a philosopher or something of that nature. It's not seen that it's an impediment to spiritual life. It's not that in order to become Krishna conscious, in order to become spiritually enlightened, I have to give up my day job, give up my occupation, ignore the nature of the body I've been born with in this lifetime, and that only by leaving it all behind and heading off to the Himalayas, that's the only way that I can become Krishna conscious or become spiritually enlightened. And this is a misconception that Arjuna was having during his crisis on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, that he felt, no, Krishna, I've decided that I need to become enlightened. I can't be here fighting a battle. I need to go and just dedicate myself to meditation and give all this up. But that would be, as Krishna points out, unnatural. He says if you try to do that, you'll just end up fighting in just the same way, except instead of having a purifying occupation, fighting for Krishna, engaging his nature for Krishna, he would end up maybe getting in some feud or argument with another yogi out in the Himalayas and bop them in the face, and that would not be purifying. And so this Vedic path is not necessarily to try to artificially repress the material nature that we've acquired this lifetime, but to engage it in a way that ultimately allows us to be spiritually elevated. And so here in this purport, we're learning that one of the, well, we probably already knew, that one of the natural occurrences in life is childbirth, as obviously this is how human society is perpetuated, through childbirth. And Prabhupada is pointing out here that although this is a natural thing which is embraced and utilized in Vedic society, it's often considered a source of inconvenience in material society. And even to the point, Prabhupada says, of if there's an unwanted child who has appeared within the womb of an individual, then they're so averse to the idea of having to take care of a child that they'll even kill the child within the womb. in Vedic society, the various ways in which childbirth is embraced is mentioned here, that even before conception takes place, there's a Garbhadana ceremony, which is a ceremony to essentially focus, for the husband and wife to focus their consciousness on Krishna, meditating with the understanding that the whole purpose and goal of life is Krishna. Therefore, as we go about this undertaking of having a child, let's try to remember that the purpose of that is to bring up a child in such a way that that child will be a great asset to the world, will be a great boon and benefit to the world by being raising a child who's a very nice character and who's focused on the real values of life, Krishna consciousness. And then that person will grow up and become like a beacon of hope for the rest of the world. They'll be able to make a contribution to the world. And also, the parents have the opportunity to help their child in raising them in a Krishna conscious atmosphere, a Krishna conscious environment, so that they can make that spiritual cultivation even beginning from a very young age. So that's the Garbhadana ceremony. And then within the womb, there's various ceremonies. And as we hear here, all the ladies in the neighborhood will come and participate and encourage each other. And it's a very warm community gathering, as well as being very much aimed at a spiritual focus. And it's very important also that a child coming into the world feels wanted and loved by mother and father, as mentioned here. And so why is it that in modern civilization there's this tendency to consider pregnancy or childbirth as a burden? Well, what it ultimately comes down to is that modern society, modern human society is founded on the principle of sense gratification. The principle of I am this body, therefore there's not really any other purpose in life than being happy as this body. And so making sure the body, the body, am always comfortable, always have access to whatever kinds of pleasures in life that I'd like to enjoy. And therefore, there often comes a tendency of wanting to enjoy having company with the opposite sex, but wanting to just do so freely without having to take up any kind of responsibility or inconvenience from that. And so therefore, there's many different kinds of mechanisms that are used to allow a man and a woman to come together, enjoy together physically, but not have to deal with what's considered a burden of raising children, getting pregnant, going through this whole process. And this creates a very unnatural situation. And it creates a situation where ultimately childbirth is looked down on in many ways. And it's become more and more common for couples to just avoid having kids altogether. And there's an acronym, DINK, stands for double income, no kids. And so this is seen as like very desirable position in society to be a dink. You have a couple, they're both working, so they've got twice the income, but because they don't have any kids, they don't have that massive outpour of financial resources going out the other end, like it's just coming in one end, going out the other end. And so they just have all their resources to just kind of go out, have a nice night on the town every night, go on vacation, just kind of enjoy all the pleasures of modern society without having to take responsibility for, without having to accept any obstacles to material enjoyment which children would present. And so in the Krishna consciousness movement, our purpose is to cultivate pure devotional service to Krishna. And in general, the best way to go about that is to understand our nature and be engaged in life, in devotional service, according to our nature. And in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, although this is the chapter of Bhagavad Gita that's all about meditation, yogic meditation, in which Krishna describes how one leaves society and goes off into the Himalayas, prepares some kusha grass and a mat for oneself to just sit down in a holy place, far removed from the distractions of any city or modern life. Close one's eyes halfway and very deeply enter into meditation just for hours and hours each day, minimizing one's needs, bodily needs, as much as possible. But interestingly enough, Krishna prefaces or begins this chapter with the statement that actually the real yogi is not the one who lights no fire and performs no duty, but it's the one who basically performs those duties in Krishna consciousness, offering, without attachment for the result, offering everything to Krishna. So this lighting of the fire is representing the various yagyas that householders generally perform. Householders have many duties to perform, taking care of family members, purifying their wealth by offering it to the temple, offering it in service, performing service themselves, performing various kinds of yagyas to benefit their family, their society, spiritually, and also just many material duties to perform. Yet the real yogi is not the one who doesn't light these fires of sacrifice, who doesn't perform their duties, who does it in the spirit of Krishna consciousness. So we don't have to meld ourselves into any kind of unnatural position in order to practice spiritual life and become successful in Krishna consciousness. We can accept what Providence has given us in this lifetime in the form of our own physical body and subtle body, our psychology, our nature, and under the expert guidance of a spiritual master who knows how to recognize exactly what a person's nature is and what exactly is the proper prescription for how that person should be engaged, that will do them the most benefit with the least distraction, with the least difficulty for them. Under the guidance of such an able spiritual master, we can engage in devotional service and perfect our life. So that's essentially what I had to say on the subject. Are there any comments or any questions? Dr. Jason Prabhu?
Yeah, I suppose the elephant in the room seems to me to be the subject of control of the sexual urge and celibacy, actually. So what is the relevance of that right now, do you think, in modern society? Because I think generally if you start to talk about celibacy, you're a nut. So what, evidence of that in modern life.
Yeah.
Because that's actually crucial to the this diversity, the raising of a child and the control of sexual overindulgence.
Yeah. Yeah, control of sexual indulgence is not one of the strong points of our human society, and I think you're right in intuiting that they would see celibacy as being quite irrelevant in many ways. And again, that goes back to what do I understand as being the purpose of life, and what I understand as being the purpose of life is going to be based on what my identity is, on who or what I think I am, how I define myself, and if I understand that the body that I'm currently residing in is just an external machine, it's a machine that's external to myself, then I can understand that the purpose of my life cannot be to simply feed that thing with like delectable foods and pleasurable experiences. In perhaps a similar way, that although we utilize vehicles, we use cars every day, and people take care of their cars, they give it an oil change when it's needed, they always top it up with petrol, keep it clean and everything. And yet, because they know that the car is something external to themselves, they know that it's just a means to a higher end. They see maintaining the car as a means to an end, right? They don't think that just by putting petrol in my car, I'll be happy. Or, you know, there's this, I've heard a devotee one time say that somebody feels hungry, and it's like, oh, I'm so hungry. Oh, let me just put some more petrol in the tank. And he goes and fills up his car with petrol, and it's like, why am I still hungry? Maybe I need to put some more petrol in, you know. So if I understand that this body, just like a vehicle, is external to myself, then I'll think, oh, okay, it needs some petrol, it needs an oil change, so I have to take care of those things. So similarly, the four, we could call them needs of human civilization, is that we need to be able to eat, we need sleep, generally we need to find a mate. Not everybody necessarily, but that's a general need in human society, is to find a mate, and also to defend ourselves, to have some shelter, clothing, etc. And so if I understand that the body is an external mechanism to myself, then I'll treat it like my car. I'll give it the food that it needs, sleep that it needs. If I'm not satisfied being celibate throughout my life, then I'll find a mate who's like-minded and also has spiritual goals, and I'll take care of all the arrangements that I need for a simple home, to be able to live in safety and comfort. But I won't dedicate my whole heart to this. I'll understand it's a means to an end. But if I think I'm the car, if I think I'm the body, then I'll just see that eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, this is the essence of life. This is the only purpose of life, is to enjoy eating as much as possible. So many different cuisines to try and to enjoy. I'll dedicate my life to that. So many, I'll just make my bed as comfortable as possible and make sure that I can spend as many hours as I want sleeping, and so on and so forth. And so the idea of abstaining from sex life, it just, doesn't necessarily really enter in so much to that equation, because I think I'm the body. The purpose is to enjoy the body. So why would I see any value in stopping that? As far as celibacy goes, there's two kinds of celibacy. One kind of celibacy is when one abstains from having any sex life throughout the entire duration of their life. And the other kind is when, in Vedic society, it's also considered a form of celibacy if one finds a husband or wife to unite with, realization, and if within the sanctity of marriage which is performed under Krishna's authority, for Krishna's pleasure, then within that framework, if one utilizes that natural sexual tendency for the purpose of begetting good children, then in that context, that's also considered a form of celibacy, and Prabhupada uses the term grihastha brahmachari. Somebody who's like that is a grihastha brahmachari. And so there's those two different ways, and so we can understand how somebody might be overwhelmed. There are many people who are overwhelmed at the thought of following the first path. So the second path is more accessible to many people. And if people from out in the world, they start to take an interest in the Krishna consciousness movement, well, they may find that second path quite relevant to making both, continuing to live in the world because they're not detached enough to just give it up, but then practicing celibacy in a way that's fathomable. Okay, there's two hands up. Do you have a follow-up to that?
Just a little follow-up. Obviously, I agree absolutely with what you're saying. I'm just seeing that there's a huge gap between us, where we are and where the common lay person is that we approach, and how can we bridge this huge gap?
Like, how can we explain celibacy to them?
Yeah, the value of that
in a way that's relevant.
Make it relevant to.
Is your comment related to this, Christopher?
Maybe first, don't need to preach to them that abstain from this, abstain from that. I mean, you can do it, just say, but don't go further than that. We do it because this, was it. Because people ultimately, I wanted to say first that for them it's weird because that's the highest pleasure they have. Unless they touch something greater, they don't get the point why. And,
Exactly.
But if they see that, these guys they are different, like, this woman, this man, they are different, they are like so effulgent, like, what? Or they get some association and they see their desire decrease, and they can get an understanding of like what does it mean celibacy is not just like ultimately is what brings us joy. Usually starts from like indulging into illicit sex.
Yeah. So, because really, where does the idea of the value of celibacy come into in the first place? Well, it's if you can convey to people that the real value in life is spiritual. In other words, convince them of the value of spiritual life, the basics, that we're not this body, we're actually spirit souls. We're spending all our time slaving away for the benefit of the mind and the senses, which are completely different from us, and the only kind of so-called enjoyment that comes from that is just like a flash in the pan, and it's very temporary. It's not going to actually satisfy the self. And if somebody becomes interested in spiritual life, then it's pretty easy from that point forward to convey to them the value of abstaining from illicit sex, because the picture is very clear in the Bhagavad Gita that you have spiritual life on one hand and the life dedicated to sense gratification on the other hand. They're like trying to do both at once is like trying to travel east and west at the same time. You can't do it. You're either going east or you're going west. And the pinnacle of all sense gratification is sexual union. This is like the heart of all attachment. This is the heart of all sense gratification in the material world. It's the pinnacle. And by engaging wantonly in any form of sense gratification, even eating pizza without first making it and offering it for Krishna's pleasure, you know, is condemning and binding. It binds the soul to the material world. It binds the soul to continually die and then again be reborn and then again go through the aging process, again suffer diseases and again die again, repeated birth and death. So this is the result of sense gratification, and the result of practicing spiritual life is to be you get liberated from that. And sex life is like the most condemning form of sense gratification, because we're taking a living being, just a living being, and we're just wanting to enjoy the body, this dull matter of the body, you know, illicit sex particularly. So here's a living entity, here's a full-fledged person, a person with the full range of sentience and consciousness and emotions, and just like I want to be loved and be treated nicely, and I want to be happy, so every other living entity wants to be happy. So you're dealing with a person, an object of sex desire, who's actually a person, and instead you're just treating them like an object. It's like, it's the most degrading form of consciousness. It's like, I'm just going to see you as an object whose only purpose is to bring pleasure to my senses. So that's literally it's basically as far opposite to Krishna consciousness as you can get, practically. It's like as far opposite to spiritual consciousness as you can get. Just completely ignorant of the presence of the spirit soul within the heart of that living entity, what to speak of the super soul, and that living entity has an eternal loving relationship with Krishna. And by engaging with somebody in that way, I'm also turning them further and further away from that internal relationship with Krishna, more out towards the senses, towards identifying with the body. And I'm doing the same thing to myself every time I interact with somebody in that way. And so, I mean, really, I think the key to this is this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Yehi samsparsha jalbhoga dukkayonaya evate adyantavanta kauteya nateshu ramate buddha. So the translation to this one is,
which verse?
Yehi samsparsha jalbhoga.
Yeah, the number.
The number, it's
5th chapter.
5th chapter? It's in the 5th chapter. I don't know exactly what. But I'll tell you the translation. So, Yehi samsparsha ja. Samsparsha. Sparsha means touching. So samsparsha means touching something. Yehi samsparsha ja bhoga. So bhoga means enjoyment. So, and ja means born or born of. So that particular kind of so-called enjoyment, which is born of touching or contact between the senses and the sense objects, yehi samsparsha jalbhoga dukkayonaya evate. 522?
522.
Dukkayonaya evate. So dukkha means suffering. Dukkayonaya evate. It simply, this literally means that is the womb of suffering. That is the womb from which suffering is born. So I'm walking around thinking I'm going to be happy by touching things with my senses. But Krishna is saying here, that's literally the cause of all your suffering. So, and then the second half of the verse reveals that those who are spiritually minded persons, those who are buddha, intelligent, they don't take any interest in that kind of bhoga. And why do they not take an interest? Adyantavanta kaunteya, because they see that kind of enjoyment, it begins here, here's the middle of it, and then there's the end and it's gone forever. So any kind of enjoyment that has a beginning point is going to have an end point, and any kind of enjoyment that has an end point, we as spiritual souls who are eternal shouldn't take really any interest in. So those who have spiritual intelligence, they see this. I'm not interested in any of this yehi samsparsha jabhoga. This samsparsha jabhoga, happiness or enjoyment, just born of touching the objects of the senses with my material senses. It's causing me suffering, can't bring me any happiness. It only is a flash in the pan that lasts for a moment. And it just brings the conditioned soul further and further into material bondage. Sex life is the pinnacle of all samsparsha, samsparsha jabhoga. So, what do you think about that? Does that help to kind of explain it to a spiritually interested person?
Hopefully. Does the higher taste play a role in this?
Higher taste. Yes. I mean, basically we can't really make spiritual advancement just on the basis of our knowledge of these things. So we're explaining this, and Krishna explains it, because he wants us to know it. We need to know it in order to properly orient ourselves. But what is the key that's actually going to allow us to go beyond it? It's that when we give ourselves to this process, we experience, as you're saying, higher taste. So there's the reason we continually go after sense gratification is there is some sense of a taste in it, and it's our nature to be taste seekers actually. And then the mayobhyasat, because actually our eternal nature is to always be in pleasure, and here in the material world we're not experiencing so much pleasure, but it's our nature to have pleasure, to always be happy. So we're seeking it here and there. We can't, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that as soon as the living entity has no pleasure in life, he leaves the body. So we just can't live without it actually. So as we practice Krishna consciousness, even right from the beginning, we can begin to have a higher taste. And as Yamunacharya said, once he's gotten into his stage of being a very advanced bhakti yogi, he just, even the thought of sex life just has no appeal. And he spits at the thought, because he's experiencing so much higher ecstasy in life. So that's, as far as the realization stage of it, the higher taste is very necessary. Yeah. Okay, so it's 9:02, so I think we're going to go ahead and just end here. Please forgive me if anybody still wanted to say something. Thank you for kindly giving me the opportunity to purify myself by reading and discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you for your association, everybody. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantha Raja Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Shantatma Prabhu ki jai.
Gaura Bhaktavrinda ki jai.
Shantatma Prabhu ki
He already said that. You're not allowed to say it twice.
What?
He already said it.
Oh, I didn't hear
What
that.
happened if you said it twice?
You have to take breakfast.
It's done.
Just because I wrote it on the board, I wanted just to check with you. Prabhu, did I get the accents correct? Is this